Pleasant good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, the 23rd day of October 2024. 13 days, lucky 13. Are you feeling lucky? Do you feel lucky? I certainly feel lucky, as I do every time I get to come hang out in Hugh Hewitt's world. It is the Hugh Hewitt Show for this Wednesday, the 23rd of October. I am Mark Davis, filling in from the happy confines here of 660 AM The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is also, of course, the Salem News Channel DFW headquarters, and it's great to be with you. Hugh was up a little late last night, and that's certainly to be understood, on the tour. They're doing Ohio, they're doing Pennsylvania, they're doing Arizona. So like the campaigns themselves, hitting the swing states in what is called the Battleground Tour. And our buddy Mike Gallagher is there, and Charlie Kirk's going to make some appearances in there, and some of the local folks are going to be making appearances there. Chris Stegall in Philadelphia, et cetera, as that's the next place they go. But anyway, Hugh up late last night. He'll be with you tomorrow, I guess, from Pennsylvania. And so but we're here together today. So Mark Davis, hi. I'm sure we've run into each other before, either here or somewhere on the radio, somewhere on the Salem News Channel, or just somewhere in life. You can follow me in the old X Twitter at Mark Davis, M-A-R-K Davis. Shoot me some stuff if you want to. I'll check that during the breaks. But the best way to get a hold of me is that wonderful old talk show staple called the phone. 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. That is the Hugh Hewitt Show phone number, and it's great to be here with you. We got great folks coming up. We got Mary Catherine Ham coming up, Matt Continetti from Commentary, Representative Michael Walls, really great friend of mine, Matt Makoviak, one of the best analysts in the business, Harlan Ullman, a guy who wrote an article. The article title jumps out at me. Whenever I get to do Hugh Hewitt, the wonderful Danielle produces, lays out the guests, and says, essentially, hey, what do you want to do? Which is like kid in a candy store for me. And so what I do is I go looking at stuff, pieces I've read, things that I've found that seem interesting. And if anything jumps out at me, and Mr. Ullman wrote a piece, the headline was, what if Joe Biden really was the better candidate? I mean, for Democrats, the better option. What if, as horribly as this entire Kamala Harris thing has gone, just with the dumpster fire that it has become, and I want to ask you about how you think it's going here with 13 days to go. Is it possible that, let's jump in the time machine, go back not so very long ago, keep Biden as the candidate, even with all of his infirmities? Is it possible he might be doing better? It's a fun thought exercise. We'll ask him about that, and we'll wrap up today with the great Josh Kroshauer. So what more do you need? Phone number, I'd think, so that you can join us, 1-800-520-1234. Let's take a look at some things that are happening as of this morning and see where we are and take a look at where your thoughts are. Let me share mine. I'll go first. My nervousness, and there's always nervousness because you never know what's going on. You never know what's going to happen. We can't guarantee anything on November 5th. So we'll see. We'll all learn together, won't we? Please let it be November 5th. Let's not have election week or dallying around on Thursday and Friday. Oh, we just found another trunkload of votes. Please, 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 no. And of course, we'd like for it to go our way. We'd like to save the country. We'd like to rescue America. So a month ago, my nervousness quotient was centered around the choice is obvious to me. And I don't even mean just conservative me, Republican me, talk show host me, American me, human being me. I know how many genders there are. I like borders. I like having one. It's better than not having one. I like the Trump economy better than the Biden economy. Those are just objectively true before you even get to how I feel about abortion rights, how I feel about taxes, any of that. So my nervousness, if you could call it that, was please, Lord, don't let the country screw this up. It was up to the country. I said to my local audience here in North Texas, I said, it is up to the country. Trump's out there, Kamala's out there. They are known entities. There they are. There they are. America, don't screw this up. Please don't screw this up. I said that a lot during August, September. As September turned to October, and I think it was the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. In fact, I know it was. There was something about that where I just took a look at that and I said, you know what? There's more people like that. And I don't even mean MAGA hat wearing Trump faithful, but just solid Americans who want borders and who believe that crime should be punished and who know how many genders there are, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's more of that than there is people getting news off TikTok. America is filled with idiots, filled with people who are a millimeter deep, filled more than ever before. But Trump's win, if we are blessed to get it, is not just going to be people like me, people like Hugh, H-U-G-H, people like you, Y-O-U. If you're conservative, and we accept everybody around here, disagree, we love it, 1-800-520-1234. It's going to be just folks who might not be all that ideologically wired. It'll be folks who may not be, they may not be steeped in politics all the time. They're just putting their clothes on, going to work, and trying to get the kids through college. They're just trying to navigate the price of groceries. They're just trying to get by. And those folks are going to be Trump voters as well. Many of them will, if they're not dyed-in-the-wool leftists. So there's more of us than there are of them. I absolutely believe that. So if there's any remaining nervousness, and Dwayne and I were just talking, I mean, every metric is going Trump's way. It's crazy. Swing states going his way. Early voting, waves of early voting, even in Helene ravaged North Carolina, even in the portions of North Carolina that were underwater. Early voting off the chain. People are walking, crawling, marching, slogging through mud to get to early voting locations. Here in my state of Texas, which is not exactly going to be a nail biter, Trump will win. Ted Cruz will beat Colin Allred, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like those margins to be long so we can send a good-sized Texas message, as my shirt does. I'm like Ronald Reagan in the Oval Office. I feel like I should always be wearing a jacket. Walked right out. Hey, excuse me, it's the middle of the night when I do this show. And I walked out. So you get the full shirt, festooned with Texas imagery. It seems only right. It seems only right. Anyway, though, my state is not going to be a nail biter. Trump's going to win. Cruz is going to win. But the rest of the country, especially those swing states, are up for grabs, and we'll just kind of see how those go. And so any nervousness that I have now has been based on the last couple of weeks. Trump at McDonald's, incredible grand slam. J.D. Vance continuing to knock it out of the park absolutely everywhere. Best running mate in the modern era. I'll back it up. Unseating the wonderful Jack Kemp, 1996. Best running mate in the modern era. Fight me. If you want to mention somebody else, it is kind of a fun parlor game. Share with me, but you know he's been great. And polling results just everywhere. In the Senate races that we didn't think we could have, maybe now we can. We knew we had Montana. We knew we had West Virginia. But hello, Pennsylvania. Hello, Ohio. Is Bernie Moreno going to beat Sherrod Brown? The answer is a definite maybe. And that wasn't a maybe a couple of months ago. It's Sherrod Brown. It's, So now any nervousness, maybe I need a synonym because it's not really nervousness. I'm feeling pretty great, pretty confident. Any mitigation of that is that I want so much for it to be real. Please tell me this is not a mirage. Please tell me that this it's not just my conservative bubble, my wishful thinking, seeing things through my lens. And I don't believe that it is, because again, Dwayne and I were talking in the action-packed half hour before we actually start the show. Remember 2012? Yeah, Romney, whatever. But we thought America was tired of Obama. Yeah, that was our conservative bubble. That was seeing things, through the eye of the beholder, the lens of the beholder. And we got beat in 2012. And the difference was, you know what the real difference maker is? We were just talking about this off the air, and I'm glad to talk about it with you, is the Democrats are absolutely apoplectic. James Carville may burst a vein at, the Cajun crypt keeper may not last the week. The left is in full panic. Look at what they're dragging out. They don't even try to say our policies are better. It's all about Trump and some quote from some stupid book or some moment at a rally where he's talking about Arnold Palmer's body parts, whatever. And it's like, this is disqualifying. They're in full panic mode. And Obama in 2012 never broke a sweat. It's like they knew they were going to be fine. Team Kamala, Team Democrat right now, I don't think they think they're going to be fine. I don't think they're going to be fine. I think there will be much wailing and gnashing of teeth in the streets. and let's have it not be. Let's have it not be days later. When we come back, there is when non-conservatives are saying this, it's noteworthy. There's an analyst who is not a conservative who says we're going to know what's going on election night, and it could well be Trump on election night and early. Whenever I get to come hang out at Hugh's house, I bring some stuff. Some musical birthdays, some chart history, some musical nuggets. That, of course, the Animals, Eric Burdon and the Animals. That their first album on which that appeared was released 60 years ago this month. That's right, we're helping everybody feel old here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. And one does well to remember that the British invasion was more than just the Beatles and the Stones. You had the Animals in there, and another act that you will hear later on in today's Hugh Hewitt Show. What you're going to hear right now is what I was talking about going into the break. I'm Mark Davis in for Hugh. Follow me on Twitter at Mark Davis. We'll have a little dialogue there. And on the phones here in just a second, 1-800-520-1234. Have you ever heard of Mark Halprin? Halprin has been a longtime writer, longtime analyst, longtime podcast guy now. And on the morning meeting, Halprin's an interesting cat. He's been essentially saying, hey, all these Democrats trying to gaslight you that everything is fine. Everything's not fine. We have data. We have people on the ground. We have people showing us that Kamala is in trouble. That's what he's been saying for a couple of weeks. Well, this week, oh my, gaining even new popularity among Democrats, I'm sure. Here's Mark Halprin saying, if you're worried about a election lasting for days, if you're even worried about having to stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on the early hours of November 6th, you might not have to worry about that because it might wrap up early.
Let's lead with the lead, as they say in journalism. If the early vote numbers stay the way they are, and that's a big if, we'll almost certainly know before Election Day who's going to win the election. We're going to talk a lot about that. The reasons why Democrats might be underperforming, the prospect that they'll recover. But again, make no mistake, if these numbers hold up in the states where we can understand even partially what the data is like, we'll know that Donald Trump's going to be president on Election Day. So we're going to talk about that, but I didn't want to bury that because it's extraordinarily important. And we got to track that day to day. That's more important than the polls right now. It's more important than almost anything because it's giving us insight into a variety of factors that are accounting for a Republican overperformance by various metrics in the early voting in the battleground state.
There you go. That's Mark Halprin. And this is the kind of stuff that Dwayne and I were just talking about. And let me say quick hi to Dwayne for PhD weight loss purposes. But first, talking about shedding things. Obviously, we'll talk about shedding pounds here in a moment. But what America seems to be shedding is the notion of, speaking of gaslighting, the kind of gaslighting that people have been able to get away with for years. It turns out that Americans really do want a border. Turns out that Americans really do want the Trump economy back. And they are able to shed the old stigmas of the things people used to use against Trump. Dwayne, my man, obviously it's been an amazing, just a couple of weeks and months, an incredible journey. What's been your thought?
I'll tell you what, Chris Cillizza over at CNN came out a couple of days ago and had this chart about how trust in regime media is down to like 8% or 11% or something like that. Nobody, I mean, even half the Democrats don't believe what they're being told by media. And he says this alone is a threat to the republic. Well, look in the mirror, buddy, right? I mean, what people are shedding is the gaslighting that they're getting fed by regime media. And that is actually a very healthy thing.
It is. It's better for everybody. Listen, we're going to have people on the left, people on the right, but we've lost, there's going to be differences of opinion and debates, and that's great. It's the way it used to be, but there's so much corruption and so much poison and so much misleading. And listen, let's go to your wise advice of look in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, what are you seeing these days compared to a couple years ago?
What I see is the engine that drove the anti-Trump support in 2020, right? Donald Trump generated 74.5 million votes for him in 2020, but he also generated 81 million votes against him. And why was that the case? It was because in his approval index, approval versus disapproval compared to Joe Biden, he was upside down by 17.5 points 4 years ago. Gallup had a poll yesterday, a daily tracking poll yesterday, where he's actually 2 points ahead of Kamala Harris on approval.
Yep.
The engine against Donald Trump, the anti-Trump engine, is just not there.
And for looking in the mirror and PhD weight loss and nutrition, 864-644-1900. So I mentioned I always bring a big music library with me into the Hugh Hewitt show. And being my age, about the same as Hugh, I'm 60, about to be 67. It can't all be from the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. Got to be some stuff for the whippersnappers. There's John Anderson, Mississippi Moon, released on his album Country Till I Die, just 30 short years ago today. There's one for the whippersnappers. Here's a whippersnapper. Here's a young man with a lot going on at Commentary and AEI. Matt Continetti is here. Matt, welcome. Wonderful to have you, sir. It's always great to drive around and listen to you and Hugh. It's great to talk to you. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask the broadest, vaguest question to start, and then we'll narrow down on some stuff you've been writing and tweeting, etc. 13 days out, how's it looking?
Well, I think it's looking pretty good for Donald Trump and the Republicans. I think they have some momentum coming off of Trump's spectacular appearance at the McDonald's in Pennsylvania over the weekend. And I think that Harris and her team, they're acting like a campaign that doesn't really know what to do. You know, it strikes me, Barack Obama is on the trail more than Kamala Harris. You would almost think that he's the candidate. She's kind of in hiding, even as she accuses Trump of dodging the media. So I'm getting mixed messages from the Harris side when I look at what they're up to. I get energy and enthusiasm and kind of a sense of fun from the Trump side in these last 2 weeks. So I'd say I'd rather be Trump than Harris in this extremely tight race.
If indeed it is, it sure looks tight on paper. But with these continuing poll numbers, and listen, I don't want to jinx anything. Thankfully, there's no such thing as jinxes. It might not be all that close. I guess we'll all just find out. Matt's phraseology was perfect in terms of the sense of fun. And Kamala's quandary is exemplified, I think, in something that it's the gift that keeps on giving, the McDonald story. McDonald's corporate has now offered her the chance to do the same thing, which gives her two terrible choices. Either accept and look like a copycat and look stunningly inauthentic, we know it would go terribly, or decline that offer and give Trump the win on the campaign trail. Isn't that kind of a microcosm of the bad luck, sort of the self-created bad luck she seems to be experiencing?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. You know, about Trump and McDonald's, what's fascinating about it is, you're right. He went there specifically to highlight the McDonald's story, that Kamala's job at McDonald's, which no one knows about. And there's no firsthand confirmation she ever worked in the McDonald's during the time frame. She can't even name the actual franchise, the specific franchise where she worked. So Trump went to McDonald's to do that. But it was also a sign of solidarity between Trump and his working class supporters of all ethnicities and races. And I think that's really the message most voters took from his appearance there in Pennsylvania over the weekend, is that Donald Trump has remade the Republican Party. It is now a working class party of every type of person in America, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian American. Doesn't matter what kind of college degree you have or whether you have one. What matters is, do you work? Do you try to do the best for your family? And are you proud to be an American? You know, are you excited about this country, about its future, but also about its past? Are you proud of its past? I think that's what makes the requirement of membership in Donald Trump's new GOP coalition. And it's why going to McDonald's, this iconic American brand, one where many millions of Americans have started off their careers at working at McDonald's. Many immigrants come to America and they start working at McDonald's. That's where the American dream begins for a lot of people. I think that was the real symbolic significance of Trump's appearance, and why I think it's generated a lot of excitement among Republicans, but also driven the Democrats batty. I mean, it's amazing
Well,
to see some
there
of
you
their
go.
reactions to it.
There you go. That's you've pivoted right to where I wanted to go, because here is this quirky billionaire showing himself as a man of the people, and then there was AOC, and I don't go to AOC for level-headed commentary about anything, but this, even for her, this is outlandish. He's laughing at you. He's putting on a costume. He's not one of you. He's mocking you. Is there anybody with a brainstem that believes this? And let me leave McDonald's if you wish, and use that as a kind of a microcosm of where everything's going. This is what Team Kamala is forced to say. We're back to the old smears. We're back to the clumsy schoolyard criticisms, because they know they don't have many issues other than abortion on which they can fight.
No, I think you're right about that. They can't talk about the economy. Americans still are not happy with this economy. They can't talk about the border because the border's been a mess. They can't talk about foreign affairs or any great diplomatic victory or end to war that Biden has brought. The war is on fire. They can't talk about trans issues, the taxpayer-funded trans surgeries for illegal immigrants and criminals that Trump has highlighted in these remarkably effective television ads. And that even in her interview yesterday with Hallie Jackson of NBC, a friendly interlocutor, Kamala Harris had nothing to say. You know, she dodged the question once again. She looked awkward, not wanting to deal with the subject. So they can't talk about any of that. What are they talking about in the final 2 weeks of this election? They're talking about how they hate Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump. They don't think he's fit to be president. Well, that's what they've been saying almost for a decade now. And if you agree with that, well, your mind hasn't changed. If you disagree with that, if you think Trump represents change, if you think he represents the working class, if you think that he represents the alternative to this kind of elite credentialed class that has managed America for decades, you're not going to listen to what people like AOC think. So I do think it's a strange place to end. If I'm not a Democratic campaign advisor, obviously, you think that you would want to actually end where you began, with the message of joy. But the summer of joy is now the fall of fear, and all the enthusiasm is on the Republican side, and that's why I give an edge to Trump as the closing period of this election begins.
The summer of joy is now the fall of fear. Quite the wordsmith, Matt Continetti. And let's wrap up with some words you've written that I just finished reading this morning in commentary. The Biden doctrine goes bust. As we talk about borders and McDonald's and gender, all of which are so important, there is that dangerous world out there. What was the Biden doctrine?
Well, it's hard to define, but the Biden doctrine essentially was that he was going to bring America back from the depths of Donald Trump. Now, of course, I remember the Donald Trump presidency as one of peace and success, things like the Abraham Accords. America is feared by the terrorists, right? You got Baghdadi, you got Soleimani. But anyway, for Democrats, it was awful. And Biden wanted to bring America back through diplomacy and through spending money at home. And the results, I think, have just been disastrous. The spending money at home gave us the inflation, which has ruined Biden's presidency and seriously threatened Kamala's chances of becoming president. And the diplomacy went nowhere. You know, diplomacy is a means to an end. I don't need to tell you this. But for Biden, diplomacy is an end in itself. And so whether it's the Middle East, where his attempts to forge this ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, when Hamas will not surrender, it's been fruitless. And in fact, we have pressure on Israel, which only gives confidence to Hamas whenever America criticizes or puts pressure on Israel. Or whether it's Ukraine, where Biden's delay in the weapon systems, you know, really kind of dragging his feet on these critical weapon systems for years now, and also continuing to limit Ukraine's range of operations, even as Russia now seems to be bringing in North Korea into this conflict. We've led to a much more dangerous world than where we started. And so that's why I think, to the degree that there was a Biden doctrine, it has been a failure.
Go read everything Matt does in commentary. He's on Twitter Continetti, where you'll see the banner that says, go get that paperback, fresh out in paperback, a couple of years old now, right? The Right, that thoughtful 100-year history of conservatism. Always great, Matt Continetti. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 1-800-520-1234. Let's knock a call out here before we say hi to MK, Mary Catherine Ham, who's coming up in a moment. Let's go to Mount Washington, Kentucky. Tim, hey, Mark Davis in for Hugh, and a good Wednesday morning to you. How you doing, sir?
Let's knock a call out here before we say hi. Okay, Mary Catherine.
Got to listen to the phone and not the radio. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. Hi, Tim.
Hey, hi, this is Tim Paxton.
So I hear. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just glad. Thanks for taking my call this morning.
You bet.
I just wanted to say one of the things that JD brought up in his debate on television was at night turning your thermostat up and energy cost. And I've been hearing talk about energy consumption doubling in the next couple of years. And I helped build coal-fired plants for about 15 years, and I know they're on track to be shut down. And so these things are not something you build overnight.
Nope.
They're talking nuclear. And I know, like here in Kentucky, Louisville Gas and Electric is going to natural gas turbines. And I know what's there now is very redundant. We don't see blackouts. But I think that this administration this is a train wreck coming.
I think the energy policies are doomed to fail, and it's sacrificing consumer choice and efficiency on the altar of the Green New Deal. Tim, God bless you, and thank you for building those coal-fired plants. I appreciate it. There was a guy, was it America's Got Talent, a Kentucky kid on AGT, sang a song called Coal Keeps the Lights On. Yes, it does. Now, nuclear can keep the lights on, too. Your solar panels can keep the lights on too. I'm a big fan of everything in the free market that people actually want to use. How about that? Little Rod Stewart from 1974, his Smiler album released 50 years ago right now. Oh my gosh. Helping everybody feel old with the musical selections as I fill in for Hugh Hewitt. Hey everybody, Mark Davis. So Mary Catherine Ham and I responded to the same Obama tweet. We featured it in the same way. Let's play Who Wore It Best. Here's Obama saying, I don't understand how we got so toxic and so divided and so bitter. My reply was, I do, implying looking in the mirror. But I'm going to give it to MK because her retort was, someone is bitterly clinging to his old, tired hype. I bow in your direction for the win. Hey, MK, how you doing this morning?
I'm all right. How are you doing? I see Obama's doing well because he's out there just like living for himself, which is, I do think when he gets on the trail, he's good on the trail. Like the people in the audience like him. Do I think that transfers necessarily? It's never really seemed to before, but he does enjoy himself, and enjoying himself is pretty much his like major pastime. Well,
you phrased it perfectly. He enjoys himself, which means he's having a good time, but he also enjoys having everybody remember. This is like McDonald's. Another indelible image of the last month is Obama strolling into that field headquarters in Pittsburgh and scolding the brothers, his term, not mine, for not being as excited about her as they were about him. And maybe that's because he was a good candidate and she's just not. Has Kamala been exactly as bad a candidate as you expected, or has she been worse? Pardon the loaded question.
No, I think she's been worse. I am astounded regularly that she can't put more than like 4.5 seconds together that are a sentence with a thought in them. She can go for a long time, but it doesn't mean anything. And a lot of politicians do that, but she does have a next level ability to say basically nothing. And I think people see it. I think the thing about Obama is that he's like, his charisma is very lofty, a little cold. Like he's just a little disappointed in you, like he is the brothers. But she is not able to be herself. He can be himself. Himself is being that sort of lofty guy who's a little disappointed in you. And she is uncomfortable in every version of herself. And she has never, since she became a candidate, particularly in this race where she's had more exposure, been comfortable in her own skin. And I think people read that, and that is the thing that makes them uncomfortable, maybe more than any of the other things, which is like are important.
Well, you really are onto something. They just give off a vibe of just, as you say, being disappointed in you. What's wrong with America? Why aren't they just glomming toward us in all the freebies that we're offering, paid for by other people's money? That's usually the Democrat crack pipe. And yet Trump racks up win after win after win in people of color, in the working class. And now it's the first time I've mentioned on the show, so let me let MK respond to it. Day after tomorrow, a few miles from where I'm sitting, something interesting is going to happen as Donald Trump comes to Texas to sit down in Austin on that little speaking of podcast, always listen to Getting Hammered, but that Joe Rogan guy is going to welcome Trump. How do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, I think it's Trump is a guy who's certainly capable of having a long conversation, right? He's a guy, again,
You think?
the contrast to Kamala is that he's a guy who is perfectly comfortable in his skin, sometimes too comfortable, which I think is the risk that he runs, right? So I imagine there will be many enjoyable moments in this Joe Rogan interview. Many things that Joe Rogan will ask about that other reporters have not asked about. Our reporting, our press at this moment is very incurious about Kamala. So I'm sure he'll ask some things that they don't ask, which will be great. I do think Trump runs a risk of being a little too fast and loose with Joe Rogan, although he's already sat down with Theo Vaughn and had this long-ranging conversation, and that
That is
was
true.
kind of a triumph, because what happened was he sat down with Theo Vaughn, revealed some interesting things about himself, had a real human conversation, and it broke through with good news for him during the DNC. So this has gone well for him in the past. It's reaching a demo that he wants to reach. These are young male listeners for the most part. There are, of course, women listeners to Joe Rogan as well. And I just like that candidates can do that kind of interview. I like podcasts. I like long form. I think it reveals things about people. She's pretty much incapable of doing that, as we saw even in the very friendly call her daddy setting.
Call
But
somebody's daddy. Exactly right.
Whoever's daddy it is, I don't know. I should know. I've said it like 8,000 times, but I can't remember. And so I think it'll be interesting above all else.
Well, let's get with a simpler podcast title, and that's Getting Hammered, you and Vic. It's always great. In our final 60 seconds, if we follow you on Twitter, we see all kinds of wise commentary, and we see birthday pictures. How'd that go yesterday?
Oh my gosh, it went great. We have a 3-year-old now. We got to get to the potty training. We'll figure it out. But I did make a pretty cool Paw Patrol cake that I was proud of. So I had to put that up. She was pleased with it, and it went swimmingly. Although I'm not sure that 3-year-olds really care about their birthdays. But she got a bunch of new stuff. So here we go.
Hey, we care. We care. And at this point, it's all about us because we're putting in the work. Thanks, MK. God bless you. Mary Catherine Hammer, just magnificent podcast and a great piece of writing every time she appears anywhere. Fox News contributor, etc., etc. A good morning, everybody, in the Hugh Hewitt listening universe, and go to the Hugh-universe. Clever turn of a phrase there. Your one-stop shop for everything Hugh. Hugh is recovering. Well, he's sleeping like a normal person, because especially when you got the California thing going, Hugh's an East Coast guy for the moment. Obviously, he's out there doing the Beltway thing, but in California, where you get up at 1 to do this show. If he had a late night event last night, doggone it, he deserves a day off, and I'm here to give him one. He'll be back tomorrow as the Battleground Tour gets ready to go from last night's event in Ohio to a new one in Pennsylvania. We're going to hop to a call in Pennsylvania in just a moment. In fact, we got a couple of segments that can be ripe for your calls at 1-800-520-1234. Got a bunch of guests coming up. We had a bunch in the first hour, but it's always a joy to talk to you about how you think things are going 13 days from the American rescue. 1-800-520-1234. As we get to calls in just a second, let me share with you one of our themes of the first hour was who seems to be having a good time and who just seems beleaguered and bedraggled and downtrodden. The big difference between 2012, when we as conservatives thought that an under-inspiring nominee like Mitt Romney might nonetheless beat Barack Obama. It was kind of our bubble, kind of preaching to the choir. It was sort of our chorus singing from the same hymnal, and we got beat. So what can I tell you? Obama's folks never broke a sweat. They knew they were going to win. Now Obama is out berating black men for not loving Kamala enough for racial reasons. Last night in Detroit, he's rapping with Eminem, and nothing attracts crossover voters like rapping with Eminem. But my point here is that Trump is going to be on Joe Rogan on Friday with the McDonald's thing that I just can't scrub from my brain. Not that I ever would. It's one of the great political moments in recent history. And here's J.D. Vance on the campaign trail in Arizona on cut 3, describing how he really has the easy job.
I got the easiest job in American politics. I got to go around and just remind the American people that Donald Trump delivered rising take-home pay and low inflation. That's a pretty easy job. Governor Walz has to go around and somehow convince the American people that Kamala Harris is going to solve the very problem she's been creating over the last 3.5 years. That is tough. We should feel bad for him. We should say a prayer for Governor Tim Walz, because that is a tough, tough job.
He just gets better every day. Does J.D. Vance have an easy job, or does he just make it look easy with his just consummate skill set on the campaign trail? And look, do we all think that campaigns are too long? Do we all think that campaign talk lasts too long and starts too early? You might glibly say yes. But the fact of the matter is, we love this. We've been talking about this election ever since the last election. Do you think the last election gave us a little springboard to talk about this one? But even right now, I find myself thinking about the 2028 primaries containing Vice President J.D. Vance, a still beloved Ron DeSantis, and freshly minted Republican Tulsi Gabbard. Now, she's still a lib on a couple of things, but we got some time to work on her. Her transition has been, that's a transition I can support from Democrat to Republican. So on various issues, let's hop to the phones. 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. And we are in Pennsylvania. We are in Pittsburgh. And Rich, Mark Davis in for you. Good Wednesday morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Mark. Hey, everything you just said is a microcosm of what Pittsburgh's doing right now, too. And I'm not as worried about the Dems. We're convincing Dems what's going on. I'm worried about our Republicans in Pennsylvania sometimes. They're still like letting these little things getting away from the big picture. Pittsburgh area here, we can help elect and flip and put President Trump in. We have Dave McCormick running for Senate, who's a great candidate. Oh, he lived in Connecticut for a little bit. Who cares? Move on. Put Dave into the Congress and help flip the Senate. We have 2 congressional races right here in the Pittsburgh area. We have James Hayes, who's running against our equivalent to AOC, which is Summer Lee. And we have Rob McCurry, who's running for Congress. We can help strengthen the Congress in our area right here. And like I said, Pittsburgh can help move the nation by electing President Trump, Dave McCormick,
and the guys you mentioned. And I think the chances of that are pretty high because Pittsburgh is a good, strong American working class town. And, I think he'll do better in Pittsburgh than he does in Philadelphia. But was it the aforementioned James Carville who referred to Pennsylvania, as deep blue at the ends with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and Alabama in the middle? You put it all into a big hopper, and it will be, as I've said before, sort of the non-ideological people who deliver Pennsylvania to Trump. Of course, there's hardcore MAGA in Pennsylvania. Of course, there are dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. Of course, there are lifelong Republicans in Pennsylvania. But if Trump wins Pennsylvania, as it's increasingly appearing he might, it will be from people who are just working-class folks, union folks, who are tired of being taken for granted by their union leadership. That's going to be part of the Trump Pennsylvania win. Let's move to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And Scotty, that is you. Mark Davis in for you. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning. Doing great.
Hi.
I wanted to talk about the Brett Hume interview with Kamala. And she accuses
Brett Baer.
Trump of being a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And says he won't obey the law. Then she turned right around when it was talking about the transgender ruling and says that he obeyed the law, which, that he followed the law just like she would do. And I think that was a missed opportunity for Trump and the Republicans to, backlash on her. Hey, you can't have it both ways. You can't accuse us of following the law and breaking the law also.
Correct. Completely correct. And thanks, Scotty. If on the eternal question this year and maybe moving forward is how big a deal are these gender issues? The way you learn and know that the gender wars are something that we are winning is because the left says we're silly to be talking about them. Hey, you conservatives, stop talking about that. Or their favorite thing, you're just saying that to divide us. Well, shoot, yeah, we're looking to divide America between the people who know how many genders there are and the people who don't. Every election divides America. Divisiveness is awesome. Unity is a myth. And you just follow exactly what I'm talking, because this is okay. It's all right. We're going to have Democrats. We're going to have Republicans. We're going to have conservatives. We're going to have liberals. We're going to have people who know there are 2 genders, and we're going to have people who think there are 22 genders. We're going to have people who do not think that a dude should be competing against your daughter in volleyball or swimming or track. And we're going to have people, a whole political party, in fact, that believes it's just fine. And every time we shine light on them and say, why do you believe, not just why do you believe that it's okay for men to compete in women's sports, but I'd like to ramp it up even further and ask every Democrat candidate just how fascist they're going to be about it. And this is what I mean. Ask Kamala, ask Tim Walz, ask anybody. If you run into someone who says there are only 2 genders, that's what God made, that's what science defines, there are only 2. There should not be men competing in women's sports. The pronoun stuff is nonsense. If you run into somebody with those opinions, which I'm going to say is at least 65% of America, do you consider that to be hate speech? Do you consider that to be hate speech? If they're honest, they will tell you yes, which reveals the degree to which they don't just have horrible ideas in their head, but they are looking to criminalize, demonize, marginalize, and maybe outlaw the ideas that are in your head. So yes, the gender wars are worth fighting. They're all kinds of different. I mean, the border is in our face every day. The economy is in everybody's face every day. Taxation is enormously important to everybody. And every time somebody says, how many people are we really talking about? How many boys are there on girls' volleyball teams? How many men are there in those locker rooms? And the answer right now is fairly infinitesimally small. And we're going to keep it that way, and we're going to reduce it to 0. Because if we fall asleep at the switch, if we just say, it doesn't matter, whatever, it's just a few people. Well, yeah, it's a few people now. How many pornographic books were on school library shelves some years ago? It's not many, it's controversial, whatever, let the kids sort it out. Well, now we're on them. Now they know we're on it, and that's why they accuse us of book banning. We're not banning anything. You can go still buy these books wherever you want, but we're just keeping inappropriate things off of school library shelves. And we're saying no to men competing against women. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. Happy Wednesday. A couple of reasons for some Hall & Oates out of touch. First of all, it might be the Kamala Harris Tim Walz campaign theme. But Big Bam Boom, the Hall & Oates album on which this appeared, released 40 years ago this month. Ouch. Alrighty, hey, let's move to something inspiring. AmFed Coin and Bullion, many good reasons to buy gold and silver. Bank failures, digital currency volatility, emerging market countries trying to topple the dollar. AmFed Coin and Bullion, huge choice for precious metals. So if you ask AmFed owner Nick Grovich to simplify the case for precious metals, he'll say, look, when President Roosevelt recalled the gold in circulation and people paid with paper money, they got a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Today, that $20 bill won't even fill up a half a gas tank. The gold piece worth $2,700. So that would, which would you rather have? So AmFed Coin and Bullion, Nick's been in the industry for over 42 years, proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. If you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and the team at AmFed Coin and Bullion, 1-800-221 7694, 1-800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Okay, Mark Davis in for Hugh. Let us roll to your calls. We are in Atlanta, and Chris, Mark Davis in for Hugh. Happy Wednesday. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi.
So
This is the
my
part where you start.
comment is about the abortion topic, which doesn't often help Trump in the votes. And my point is that the word sex is never used in the media or in the Congress or whatever. But it's about the women talk about their body and their choice. But what about not having sex and it being such a free for all? And before Roe v. Wade in the 70s, it was a bit more conservative, and now you can just hook up and all that. And I just think the Republicans need to put that out on the table more.
Yeah, there's some things that are correct that may or may not help us. You're totally right. I mean, if you look at the roots of everybody's enthusiasm for abortion, it was to be able to have consequence-free sex. Whoops, got pregnant. Well, let's take care of it. I have a feeling that making that point, valid though it may be, would probably look like hectoring and lecturing and a horse that's way out of the barn. And that I think that the better argument these days is that is a newly created life in there that deserves the right to live. And right now, especially for the next 13 days, the best point to make is, hey, the Constitution is being honored. Every state gets to make its own rules. We are next in Sarasota, Florida. Mick, Mark Davis in for Hugh. How you doing this Wednesday?
Hey, good morning, Mark, and
Hi.
Thank you for filling in for Hugh. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Listening to you on the great WLSS 930, the answer out of Sarasota, probably our
Excellent.
only source for conservative talk around. But as much as I like all the positive stuff, I don't know if you remember that old movie Aliens, but there was a phrase that said "Stay frosty," and I think we need to stay frosty. As far as what type of lead we have, personally in Sarasota County, which is slowly drifting blue, man, I'm not seeing it on the ground. I'm seeing a lot of Kamala support, and I think it's worrying. And I'm also worried about this election in Florida because we have something on the ballot that's going to bring the libs out in droves.
I know.
That's libs that never voted.
Speaking
In
of
a long
abortion,
time.
exactly right. Exactly.
No,
right.
it's not abortion. It's pot. It's legal.
Oh, the pot. I'm sorry. That's right. You got weed and abortion on the ballot in Florida. Exactly right. I'm not worried about Florida, but you've still got a fantastic point. I'm not worried about Texas, but I still want decisive wins. I want Trump to win the swing states. I want Trump to win Texas by 7 or 8. I want Trump to win, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Nevada and Arizona. I'd like for those. The voters in Florida not just to stand up as they have for DeSantis and as they did for Trump 4 and 8 years ago, but to also stand up for life and against legal weed, which is a terrible, terrible idea. Just think about this. If there's anything, the pendulum is swinging our way in a lot of ways. There's some things that are not, where I want to grab the pendulum and bring it back. One is weed and the other one's gambling. And I'm not vociferously anti-gambling, but we got so many stupid young people, especially stupid young men, with phones in front of them, and now you can bet on whether the next play in a football play is going to be a run or a pass, and they're flushing their lives down the drain. And there's no way that making more intoxicants legal makes a better society. Think about that. Smoke that for a while. Mark Davis here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. So 40-some years ago, when I was doing my very, very first talk show ever at WOKV in Jacksonville, the 6th Congressional District was just south of me, and it's long enough ago that a Democrat was serving there, Buddy McKay, who would go on to become governor of Florida. Subsequent congressman of that district would be that guy named Ron DeSantis, who also went on to become governor, and who knows what lies ahead for him. Serving now, Mike Waltz, author of Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. Let's talk about some things in the news with Congressman Waltz. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to see you.
Hey, good to be with you. And I thought you were going to ask me about governors. Like, man, there's a long history in that in that district. I live in St. Augustine, by the way, the oldest city in America.
Joe Biden recalls growing up there at some point in its early days. If we can make a joke of that. And Mike Waltz is here, and I want to ask you what I've asked everybody before we drill down on some things of expertise to you, and that's just asking everybody with lucky 13 days left, how's November 5th looking through your eyes?
I'm cautiously optimistic. This is going to be all about turnout, and one of the reasons I'm optimistic is I think the Democrat coalition has been so muddied because she's lost her base in some ways. I don't think they quite know if they turn out African American men. Are they going to actually help our side? How are they going to vote if they turn out union workers? Where we've seen the union workers siding and going for President Trump much more than the bosses. So I think their turnout operation is going to be a little bit in disarray. And then on our side, we have to get those poor people who are devastated by Helene in Western North Carolina, their ballots or out to the voting booth to be sure we get North Carolina.
Have you heard some of the intel that I have that despite the ravages of North Carolina and in states like Georgia and other places, that early voting is absolutely out, literally out the door, off the chain, record-breaking amounts. And listen, you never magically know who that is showing up in the general election, but don't we have virtually all the enthusiasm? If there is an enthusiasm gap, the Trump voter seems to be a creature motivated enormously by events on the ground and energized by the campaigns that are being run, while Team Kamala seems to be struggling mightily.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. I think Harris does have an enthusiasm problem because she hasn't laid out a vision for people to get enthusiastic for. She has a real problem in that nobody wants a second Biden term, which is essentially what a vice president would be. The last time we elected a vice president was 1988 with H.W. Bush because everybody wanted a third Reagan term. So she hasn't been able to really distance herself or run away from Biden's record or define what she's running towards. So she's trying to generate enthusiasm on her side against Trump. And anytime you're trying to generate enthusiasm against someone, it will fall short instead, versus enthusiasm for you and your vision, which has been wholly lacking on her part.
Obviously, the economy is big. Obviously, borders are big. But I really think that people are paying attention to foreign affairs, especially at a time of wars springing up all over. And you posted yesterday something I wanted you to expand on. When Blinken touched down in Israel yesterday, I hope he apologized to Bibi, that would be Netanyahu, for leaking their battle plans and told the Israelis they were right all along, because the Ayatollah is in hiding right now, not because of Biden, but because of Bibi. Can you give me a couple of paragraphs on the weirdness since October 7th of this administration saying, yes, we support Israel, they have the right to exist, but actions speak louder than words, and their actions have been actually antithetical to Israel's war interests?
Yeah, the entire crux of their strategy has been what they call de-escalation, and that's translated to pressuring Bibi and pressuring Israel to do as little as possible in response to missiles and rockets flying from Hezbollah, the attacks of October 7th, literally intercontinental ballistic missiles flying from Iran directly. But the pressure campaign has been on Israel to do as little as possible. And had Bibi listened to them and acceded to their pressure and listened to their advice and the many trips Blinken has made, Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, would still be alive. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, would still be alive. And the clock would be ticking to the next major October 7th style attack. There would be a bullseye on future Israeli civilians' heads if Bibi had listened to them. Thankfully, he didn't. The Marines from the 1983 Beirut bombing, Semper Fi, justice was served finally with the death of Nasrallah. Hamas has been decapitated. And Iran, right now, the Ayatollah is in hiding, literally, not because of Biden, but because of Bibi, who made the political leader of Hamas go boom in the middle of downtown Tehran in an IRGC safe house. and sent a very clear message. If we can get him there, we can get any one of you anywhere. That is how you restore deterrence with bullies. The world is waiting for the Israeli response to that Iranian attack. And I hope Bibi had the, I don't know, I guess the moral fortitude to say, you know what? I hope Blinken had the moral fortitude to say, you guys were right. We were wrong. How do we help you going forward?
We need an administration that celebrates when Israel makes the bad guys go boom. Last thing, Michael Waltz, you're in Congress. Let's talk Congress. It's a huge deal November 5th. If we take over the Senate, Montana looks good, West Virginia looks good, and all of a sudden, with what may be a Trump wave, Pennsylvania in play, Ohio may go to Bernie Moreno. In the House, in your House of Representatives, it would be so nice not to have just this razor-thin margin where all kinds of mischief and oddities can happen. How do you think the House is looking on November 5th?
Well, look, I think the House will move with the White House. I think President Trump will drive turnout, and the rising tide will lift all boats, including in our seats in California, including in New York. You'll see his rally in Madison Square Garden this week. You saw him down in Long Island, and I think he will have like a Lee Zeldin effect, who ran a very effective gubernatorial campaign that helped our House seats. You saw the president campaigning out in California, of all places, also will help our turnout and our House seats. So the House will move with the White House, and I think we'll wake up November 6th or 7th or 8th, and whenever we get the final results, and have all three, the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Let's go for the 6th. Let's please have it be the 6th. Mike Waltz, go get your copy of Hard Truths, Think and Lead. Absolutely, no more election week. Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret, on sale now from Mike Waltz. God bless you, sir, and thank you very much for your service and for your wonderful book. Alrighty, 1-800-520-1234. Mark Davis in for Hugh. Let's grab some call action. Let's head out to East Tennessee and Knoxville. Randy, Mark Davis in for Hugh. Happy Wednesday. How you doing this morning?
Hey, real good. Thank you, Mark. I hope you are too.
I am.
Good. Well, one of my big concerns, Mark, is the First Amendment. It seems like these Democrats are going to try to go after that. All this disinformation. A lot of countries like England and Australia, as I'm sure you know, they're, if you say, even Canada, you say something that hurts somebody's feelings, you're under arrest, and you're going to be in all kind of trouble. I think they're going to use this misinformation stuff to do an end run around the First Amendment by saying it's akin to yelling fire in a crowded theater.
Yes.
And that it doesn't apply.
I think you're onto their strategy perfectly, because it used to be that if somebody said something that you really disagreed with, you said, wow, I disagree with that. Let me give you my ideas, which I think are superior. Those days are gone. Now, to the American left, if you say something they disagree with, it is hate speech. It is disinformation. It is anti-democracy. You are a threat to the fabric of the country, if not the universe. And they absolutely will use that to chip away at the First Amendment if we are foolish enough to hand them the reins of power. We're in Pittsburgh. Frank, Mark Davis in for you. Happy Wednesday. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, thanks. How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, the reason why I was calling, every single day I have a general dental practice here in Pittsburgh, and every day I have people that are telling me they could never vote for someone who tried to overthrow the government, and they refer to January 6th.
Right.
How come nobody's picked up on the fact that in September of 2020, a month before we knew who was going to win the presidential election, and 3 months before January 6th, there was an undersecretary to Homeland Security named Brian Murphy who put out a paper in September that stated that on January 6th there were going to be right-wing extremists and white supremacists causing problems on January 6th.
Whatever.
And the response from the government was he had to tone down his white supremacy rhetoric.
Okay. Here's what to do. Because you're right. I bet in the dental practice, in anybody's business, and here, and certainly in my business, I get this a lot. And there's a good answer to it. And it goes like this. If you're walking around thinking that Donald Trump subverted democracy by opposing the automatic acceptance, the rubber stamping of the electoral result on January 6th. He believed, as do millions of Americans, that that result was flawed. He fought for that belief. He was just taking the other side. He lost, but he's coming back. Let's focus on what really matters, and that's the issues and policies. I'm going to hop back to your calls here in a minute. We got some Trump on the campaign trail here via video and audio in just a second, and we've got always an offer from our friends at Americans for Prosperity. For 20 years, Americans for Prosperity has been on the front lines, taking on the radical left, delivering conservative victories. AFP's grassroots army is millions of concerned citizens just like you, just like me, been winning for decades on the most important battles, lowering taxes on American families, protecting mom and pop businesses from government meddling, standing up to big labor, expanding right to work, empowering students with educational freedom, stopping the lurch towards socialism. It's Americans for Prosperity doing all of that. We can change the direction of the country, get off the sidelines, and get involved. Join the grassroots movement that wins. AmericansForProsperity.org/volunteer. AmericansForProsperity.org/volunteer. So you could say Trump is pretty relaxed on the campaign trail. Here he is down there at the Doral. This is cut 6. Just making a couple of observations on. Remember, Kamala says that Trump seems exhausted. Who took a day off yesterday and who noticed? Cut 6.
But there's something wrong with him. Honestly, there's something wrong, and there's something wrong with her too. She's slow, low IQ, something. I don't know what the hell it is, but they lie. We don't need another low IQ person. We had one for 4 years. We don't need another one. But
so let's jump to 8, cut 8, because Trump then goes into a little further observation on, happy birthday, belated happy birthday to Kamala. She just turned 60. Whatever she's doing, we should all be doing it, at least in terms of longevity and health. Politically, not so much. And Donald Trump, who again is knocking on the door of 80, he'll turn 80 in this presidential term that seems about to begin. And he had a thought or two in cut 8 about his younger opponent.
everything. And I was going to hit her really hard on the trail today, but now I don't have to because she's off. She's off. No, I can't get over it. Who the hell takes off? We have 14 days left, and she'll take a couple of more days off, too. You know why? She's lazy as hell, and she's got that reputation. She's a radical left lunatic. She's further left than Bernie Sanders or Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas, because I think, is Pocahontas further left than Bernie? Just about, right? It's close. It's close. Who the hell cares, right? Rick says, I don't know. But they're out there. But she's furthest left. We can't have a person. She's a Marxist.
So Trump on the campaign trail is his own reward, but the real value also is the people who interact with him on the campaign trail. At this same event, this is cut 7, a Latina mom.
It was such an honor to work for you at the White House all 4 years, and I got a front row seat of how much you cared about the Latino community, and you delivered results, and you didn't pander to us. You gave us opportunity, and that's what we want. You know, we want the American dream. My mother was born in Mexico. My dad was born in Brooklyn with very humble means, and they worked very hard and achieved the American dream. So that's how what other country could a little girl from East LA make it to the White House to work for President Trump?
Donald Trump is going to get the biggest Hispanic vote for president since George W. Bush in 2004. He's going to get the highest percentage of black vote since Nixon in 1960. And that's how you win. We're going to Houston. Victor, Mark Davis in for you. How you doing this morning? Thanks for listening.
I'm doing well. Stressed but ever blessed, Mark. Hope
That's
you're
a
doing
good way to be. You bet.
I just wanted to remind everybody that, the Republican Party it's the new party. It's the youngest party. It's the party of change, get rid of slavery. So many blacks when it first became a party, and people just forget that. And, you talk about a progressive party, we've made the most progress. And we're also the ones that, watch, like you have Eisenhower reminding us of the military-industrial complex.
That's right.
Careful of all those sort of things. So we're really the party of progress.
That's a very wise observation, because progressive is a lovely word. The reason everybody uses progressive is because liberal has become an epithet. Liberal has become a bad word. Gee, I wonder why. But the gentleman's point is golden, and it's a great point to wrap up the hour. We are the party of change. From both party establishments guiding us into foreign entanglements, we're looking to change that. From both parties being insufficiently attentive to the border, we're looking to change that. From both parties looking to spend us into oblivion, I hope we're looking to change that. Obama came out with hope and change, and nobody even knew what the change was. I would ask people, change from what to what? I don't know. We do know what we're trying to change. And on November 5th, we're going to do it. Just you watch. 13 days to go. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling it? I think Hugh Hewitt would be feeling exhausted if he were here, because he was up late last night serving the public, serving the Talkers Battleground Tour on a stage with Mike Gallagher and others in the great state of Ohio. I think Bernie Moreno was there. He's going to beat Sherrod Brown if things go the way we'd like them to on Election Day. In just a moment, we're going to talk to one of my great friends in the analyzing things industry. But we've had a lot of Trump audio as we begin. And again, I'm Mark Davis, happy host at 660 AM The Answer here in DFW, joining you from the North Texas headquarters of the Salem News Channel, and glad to be here with you. We've had a lot of Trump audio. Hallie Jackson of NBC wants Kamala to win. NBC wants Kamala to win. These are the friendly interviews are the ones that are getting her in trouble, especially when the supposedly friendly questioners ain't that friendly. This is cut 14. Here's Hallie Jackson actually pressuring Kamala on a question she did not answer with Brett Baer. Go.
Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
You never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely...
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
What do you think?
I am running for president of the United States. Joe Biden is not. And my presidency will be about bringing a new generation of leadership to America that is focused on the work that we need to do to invest in the ambitions and aspirations of the American people.
Boy, more refrigerator magnet poetry where it's just thrown up against the fridge and just say whatever sticks to the fridge. He's accomplished and he's experienced. So's Frankie Valli. Seen him on the road lately? Let us take things right to a guy who I've been talking to for a long time right here in my state of Texas. I thought, you know what, I'm doing the Hugh Hewitt show. Let's bring Matt Mackowiak in. Potomac Strategies, big activist down in, he's the Republican chairman in a deep blue county, Travis County, where Austin is located, the capital city of my home state. Matt, welcome, sir. How you doing? Welcome to the big time.
I'm doing great. Hey, Mark, how are you?
It is great to have you. I'm going to ask you the question I've asked everybody. Lucky 13 days. How's it looking? What does your gut tell you about November 5?
Yeah, look, it's less about gut and more about, the trend line. And it's pretty clear now for 3, maybe even 4 weeks that Trump's had significant measurable momentum. If you look at all the battleground state polling, it's been moving in Trump's direction. If you just looked at Michigan and Pennsylvania by itself, I think Trump is more likely to win both of those states than he is to even split both states, let alone lose both states. And that's not something you could have said, Mark, a month ago. A month ago, it looked like Harris might have been narrowly ahead. If you look at the polling from 2016, 2020 to 2024 in all the battleground states, Trump is comparatively in better shape, really across the board in the battleground states. If you look at the early voting analysis that we've seen, which is partial, and it does require some assumptions. But in a number of these states that have had voting going on, Republicans are in better position than they were in 2020 or 2016. If you look at voter registration, Republicans have made significant gains in the hundreds of thousands of voters in states that include Pennsylvania and Georgia and Nevada and others. So in the end, Trump has multiple paths to 270 electoral votes. They almost all include Pennsylvania, unless he were to run the table with some of the other states. But again, I think at the moment he is more likely to win Pennsylvania than not, and he is in stronger position today in this race with whatever we have, 11 or 12 days left, than he was 4 or even 8 years ago.
If early voting enthusiasm is something you pay attention to, and I think we should, if it's 2008, Obama versus McCain, and I saw early voting enthusiasm, I would say just objectively, depressingly, that's probably Obama, because he had the enthusiasm thing going, the enthusiasm gap tacked in his favor. Now it is the opposite. Trump clearly enjoys the enthusiasm advantage. So am I wrong in looking at record-breaking early vote in Georgia, incredibly high early voter turnout in flood-ravaged North Carolina? Is it a fair thing to say, you know what, those are probably more Trump voters than Kamala voters?
No, I think it is fair. And keep in mind, that relative performance in early vote includes mail ballots. And typically Republicans have done very poorly in mail ballots, at least in the modern era. If you go back maybe to the Bush era or before, we used to do better in mail ballots. But so it's even accounting for that mail ballot advantage that Democrats have. But you're right. If you look at an area like Western North Carolina, that's been, as you said, decimated by that hurricane, where people have not been able to return home, the state has taken extraordinary steps to enable those people to vote. But it shows how the intensity that Trump's supporters have, and that intensity is a significant advantage. There is very little intensity for Kamala Harris. She has not created that same intensity, broadly speaking. She might have with some narrow voter subgroups here or there. She might have with media stars. She might have with some celebrities. But with average people, with working people, blue-collar people, she just hasn't done it.
Let me put a presumption to the test. It's something Hugh says a lot. It's something I say a lot. I consider it to be true. And that is that Trump under polls. If you take a look at his polls in September and October of 2016, he did way better on election day. If you take a look at the polls in 2020, he did way better, irrespective of the controversial result, did better than the polls said. If indeed he underpolls, a dead heat race right now could be an electoral landslide. So A, do you believe Trump underpolls? And B, why?
Yeah, I don't think there's much intelligent debate about whether Trump underpolls. I just don't think there is. I don't think across the spectrum. I think most everyone who works in this business recognizes that the polls do not capture his support base. There are a number of reasons for that. His support base is more likely to be rural. They might be harder for pollsters to connect with. Polling in general, as people have moved away from landline phones towards cell phones, has made it much harder for them to get completed surveys. It's about 3 times harder now than it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So that makes it more expensive. It makes it take longer, and it increases the margin of error that polling has, which of course makes polling less accurate. But as to the reason why, which is a great psychological question, it very well could be that for 7 years now, maybe it's 9 years now, we've been told by our moral betters that supporting Trump makes you a bad person, that it must mean you are X, Y, or Z. And so I think that does have a psychological effect on people. It's just easier to know in your soul and in your heart, you're going to crawl across broken glass and go vote for Trump because you want to save the country again. And without having to try to convince, some morally superior person of the righteousness of that decision.
In our last 60 seconds, I think that's something I want to talk to you about, because it's not research based. It's once again very gut feeling. I think there's been a shelf life on Trump hatred and how effective it is. All these people bringing up all these things he says, yeah, but mean tweets, and yeah, he talked about Arnold Palmer's whatever, and yeah, blah, blah, blah. None of that matters anymore. We've developed an ability to focus on actual issues, remember actual policies, and have that matter more than the sideshows. It took a while, but I think in this election we got there. What do you think? 60 seconds.
I agree. And I think, again, the stakes in the election are so high. I think people are hurting across the country. The economy is not strong. It's actually very, very, very weak. You see that with credit card delinquencies. You see that across the board statistically. While the stock market may be doing well, that's a bet on the future. The present is the present. You're right. I think people have sort of been able to compare the Trump presidency with the Biden-Harris administration, and they've concluded largely that the Trump years were better for them, and it's time to go back and to solve these problems. The problems we have now are actually worse than the problems that Trump inherited in 2016 when he won the election. And so the stakes are higher. And again, I go back to that beautiful phrase that Selena Zito and Brad Todd coined in 2016, that the left takes Trump literally but not seriously, but that Trump's base takes him seriously but not literally. It literally continues to perfectly encapsulate everything that we need to understand about this election. And right now, people are hurting. They're showing up. They're intensely supporting Trump. This is going to be a close election, but I think he has probably a 65 or 70% chance of winning on November 5th.
13 days to go. Please, Lord, let that happen. Matt Makoviak, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. From deep in the heart of Texas, in deep blue Austin. We have Democrats in Texas. We just don't let them run the place. So Matt is always great. Great to have him. And great to have you. We got a little bit of an open window for a call or two if you like. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. 60 years ago right now was big in the British invasion. Those guys, what were their names? Oh, yeah, the Beatles. They were growing in popularity, as were the Stones. But here's Manfred Mann from their very first album, a little record you might remember, Do-Wah-Diddy, released 6 years ago this week, as were the Animals, House of the Rising Sun, which we played earlier. So lots of British invasion action on the Hugh Hewitt Show with some of the tunes I drag along with me every time I fill in, and it's a pleasure to do so. 1-800-520-1234. Mark Davis with you. I'm the happy morning host. As soon as I'm done here, I'm sliding down the bat pole doing the rest of my local show, so be right with you, DFW. Got a couple of things to do, and they include taking your calls at 1-800-520-1234. We're in East Tennessee. Ricardo. Mark Davis, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Happy Wednesday. How are you?
Hey, buenos dias, Mark. I'm better than average. Thanks for asking. Hi. So, hey, I made a funny meme. I'm loving this AI thing. You do a little AR. I can't draw it all, but I made a meme of Kamala Harris running with several rhinos, and I call it running with the rhinos. I put the Mitch McDonald faces on them. It's beautiful. But, hey, on the election, you know, I noticed I'm 56, 57 now. I noticed all the elections I participated in that they always call it real heavily for the Democrats. I think that's to suppress Republican vote. And then near the election, they all of a sudden shore it up and make it real close, and that way they can say, hey, look, last election we were pretty close. And also, do you think the Democrats should have ran Michelle Obama?
That would have. I always identified her as the only candidate that would genuinely scare me. I was instantly comforted by the knowledge proven out this year that she had absolutely no interest in running. Michelle Obama doesn't have any more interest in running for president or being president than Oprah. That was big. Oprah's going to run for president. Do you think that these women are going to trade in their magnificent, charmed lives for the meat grinder of a campaign and the drudgery of actually governing? There was never any remote possibility that Michelle Obama was going to be dropped in, from some hydraulic device into the middle of the Democrat convention. There was no way that was ever going to happen. Whew, and for one, I am grateful. We're in Palo Alto, California. Annabelle, Mark Davison for Hugh. How are you doing?
Well, I'll do better on November 5th when it's all over, hopefully.
Tell me. Yes, ma'am.
The reason I'm calling, Mark, it's great to listen to you, is that I feel the nail in the coffin. People are surprised that the drop in the black vote, the Latino vote, is so significant. But what I feel is that really what it turned the corner is that people who are hurting, people who can't put food on their table, people who are really scared about the future, what's happened. I'm not going to go through it all because we all know. But then you couple that with the attention that immigrants give. When you see people, my mother's in a home care in San Jose. There are Filipinos there. They work their petunias off, trying to put food on the table, having to serve Spam and what the stores donate. And then they hear about immigrants staying in $400 hotels in New York City, all this attention on getting immigrants to vote. And I think that's the turn of the screw that's just enraging people on top
I think you're right, because people, Hispanics, or people of any nationality who are here legally, they should be the people who are the most enraged at seeing people try to cheat the system and get in by not following the rules. And I think finally that's kind of sinking into some people. All righty, we are in Dallas. Brian, you got about 60 seconds, but they're all yours. How you doing?
Mark, I'm doing great. I'm a big fan of your local show here. Hey, I
Thank
just want to stress the importance of people going out and voting. I got myself into criminal trouble about 25 years ago, and one of the conditions of my probation is I wasn't allowed to vote for 10 years, and it sucked. I proudly voted again yesterday, and I just need people to realize that it's a privilege to go out there and do it and get involved.
I can't think of a better way to end this segment. And Brian, congrats on your redemption. Congrats on paying your debt, and congrats on getting out there and voting. Let's never, ever take it for granted, especially in an election year like now. If you're walking around thinking, do the borders really affect me? Does one party versus another in their economic policies, does it really affect me? This gender stuff, how many people are really doing that anyway? Does it really affect me? The answer is either yes, it does, and you're just not paying attention, or in some cases, it might not right now, but if we fall asleep at the switch, it surely will, if the left is allowed to take us deeper into the hole. So let's do something about it. 13 days from now. As I said, whenever I get to fill in with my usual gig, which I'll do as soon as we're done here in a half hour, and that's hop down and do the rest of the morning show at 6:60 a.m. The Answer here in North Texas. Whenever I do the Hewitt Show, it's like, okay, who's written some stuff that I found interesting that maybe the wonderful Danielle Hitchin can reach out and find. And this is exactly what happened. We're about to say hi to Harlan Ullman, senior advisor at the Atlantic Council, and he had a piece in The Hill, and the headline just jumped out at me. What if Joe Biden was the better candidate all along? There have to be honest Democrats wondering about that. So, Mr. Ullman, it's a pleasure to welcome you. How are you doing? And let me say hi to you. Let me ask you, first of all, what is the Atlantic Council?
The Atlantic Council is one of Washington, D.C.'s premier think tanks, which is nonpartisan. We focus mostly on foreign policy, but it's the go-to place if you're really interested in unbiased, actual, factual reporting on major events around the world. And by the way,
Very
that is
cool.
a spectacular shirt. I think you
Oh,
ought
no,
to
thank you. Thank you. I threw myself under the bus a little bit. As I told the audience, I'm kind of like Reagan in the Oval Office. I feel like a jacket is always appropriate. And I walk out in the middle of the night to do the show here in Texas. And so I'm festooned with Texas regalia on one of my favorite shirts, laying it bare for all to see. Thank you, Harlan. I appreciate that. So expand on
I hope
on
you
the
have
headline.
trousers to match.
Well, simple jeans, my man, simple jeans. That would be a bit of overkill. What if Joe Biden was the better candidate all along, even with the cognitive decline, even with the infirmity, even with the occasional inability to get through an event? Is that a question that were you kind of serious? Is that a factor of how genuinely bad Kamala Harris has been on the campaign trail?
Well, let me give you two hypotheticals. First, if on your ballot after voting for whomever, there was a third choice, would you prefer somebody else? I think 70 to 80% of Americans, of which I am one, would say yes. Second, suppose the June 27th debate never took place, or suppose that Biden did extremely well and Donald Trump was on the losing end of that. Would that have made a difference? I would make a point, Mark. Look, I believe Bob Woodward's book, War, in which Bob says that the decline in Joe has been physical, and there's no doubt that it is. Joe is an old 81-year-old man. I'm a few years older than Joe, and Joe looks his age. But that does not mean there's been any mental decline. And frankly, when I've seen shots of Biden, I think his mental awareness is still pretty good. But yes, physical decline, but you get around that. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. He was in a wheelchair for most of his adult life.
I think we might be, and I don't want to over-criticize. I don't want my partisanship to accentuate any further what I think is going on with Joe Biden's marbles. But I think generally, and listen, from Trump to you to me, we all have brain farts and missteps every once in a while. But I just wondered if, I guess visually, to bottom line it, a lot of Democrats took a look and said, whatever's happening physically or mentally, it may not be that great for another 4 months, much less another 4 years. Do you see a policy? People have asked Kamala repeatedly, is there any policy daylight between you two? And she seems to say not really, while sometimes saying that I might do different things. What would, from your policy analysis perspective, be the difference between a Biden presidency, which we will not have, and a Kamala presidency, which we might?
I think there'll be a great deal because whatever you think of Joe, and I do not believe that the mental decline is as great as people think it is. And I repeat, if he had done very well in the June 27th debate, he had a long history of gaffes and so forth. So I think that could have been understood. I'm very, very concerned about Harris if she wins because, quite frankly, she's a policy lightweight. Her experience for the high office is 3.5 years in the presidency. I don't think she's a Harry Truman. And so I'm very concerned if she were to win, who would be around her. On the other hand, I'm a fierce nonpartisan, and I'm even more worried if Donald Trump were to be elected because I think, quite frankly, as many people, including his vice president, said, I don't think Trump is fit for high office. But we're talking about Biden, and I think if Harris loses right now, which it appears she might, I think there's going to be buyer's remorse by a lot of Democrats saying maybe we should have stuck with old Joe despite his liabilities.
Aren't some of the people, and this is interesting, I'm fascinated by the fierce nonpartisan and wonder if that's possible, I guess, because in playing the Mike Pence card, I mean, can Admiral Kelly be far behind with his uncomplimentary things? These are people who grew to dislike Trump for some reason or another. And their testimony, I think, is far more personal than policy-based. Is that possible?
No, I actually know a lot of these guys quite well. Mattis, Kelly, H.R. McMaster, a number of these people. And I think it's genuinely policy-based. These are straight shooters. You can say whatever you want about them, but these are people who really take the middle ground. And I think that their comments are really quite incisive and I think very, very deleterious. Will they have an impact on the campaign? I don't think so. But the fact that your own vice president, Mike Pence, who's a conservative, would not support Trump is extremely telling. But as I said, I don't think that's going to have very much impact on the election. People have very, very strong views. And as you well know, Mark, and your listeners know, it's the Electoral College. And if Trump does what he did in 2016 to win the Electoral College, he obviously will be the 47th president of the United States.
If we're going to be that accommodating to people who have developed sudden distastes for Trump over the years, what's your take on Liz Cheney, who now abandons virtually everything she ever stood for to campaign for Kamala Harris?
Well, I oppose Liz Cheney in terms of most of her policy positions. I used to know her father quite well. Having said that, if you're objective, I think you say that Cheney is showing great backbone. If you're a Trump supporter, you're saying she's disloyal and disbelieve her. So where you sit is where you stand. But I have a lot of time for people who I think take the high road, whether they're Republicans and Democrats. And I think in this case, I think Cheney has done that. But clearly, the opposition to what she's done by the other side is going to be fierce. And people will have their reasons why they resent what Cheney has done. And I understand that. This would also apply to Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard, for example, who turned against Biden. So it cuts both ways, but I think people take the high ground for principle's sake, and that's to be commended.
Interesting. One of these things may not be like the other. Tulsi Gabbard literally became a Republican yesterday, or announced she is, and she could tell you various policy reasons why she did. If you ask Liz Cheney why she's on the trail with Kamala Harris, it's not about any single policy. She admits she disagrees with her about virtually everything, but January 6th, democracy, blah blah blah. Those seem like conversions of very different types.
You're right to a degree, Mark. But look, presidency is all about character, judgment, and experience. And I believe that Donald Trump has got a fundamentally flawed character. He's been convicted, 34 different indictments. He's got 3 trials left to go. If you take a look at his personal history of bankruptcies, 3 marriages, so forth and so on, Donald Trump's character is something that people do not want to emulate. Having said that, his personality is such that it's overcome. Look, his stunt at the McDonald's the other day, in a sense, was brilliant. He is able to attract the common person, the average American. And if you read the Wall Street Journal piece that was done by James Toronto the other day about Trump's performance before the editorial board, people say that Trump is really charming, and he is. And so in these cases, policy really doesn't count. It's character and background and personality. And in that regard, in many ways, there's no contest between Harris or Trump. Who would you rather go to a rally? You want to go to listen to Harris, or would you rather see Trump? He's an entertainer, and a showman. And so in that regard, he wins hands down.
Do Bill Clinton and JFK deserve to be reputationally maligned because of their deep personal flaws as well?
Look, in the days of JFK, it was a different era. If you just go to a White House press corps, what do you notice? All the people there were male. They were probably in their 50s or 60s, and they wore hats. And there was a band of silence. People didn't talk about the personal lives. It was a different era. That's changed. Nobody is perfect. People all have flaws. But there's a time in the past when maybe that was to be respected. On the other hand, some of the things that John Kennedy did were certainly dangerous and borderline. Are we better off today than not? That's somebody else's call to make. But I think it's just the passing of the era. 60 years ago, times were different. And right now, given social media, everybody is an open book. And you got to understand that if you're going to run for high office or you want to see high office in Washington.
That they are. Harlan, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you. Best to you guys at the Atlantic Council, and thanks for your time today. It's a pleasure to
Thank you very much. And great
Artie,
show.
let us check in with Josh Kraushaar, see what's going on with Josh, and it's always a pleasure to visit with him, editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider, talk a little Israel, little election, a little more. Speaking of the 80s, as we get ready to talk to Josh Kraushaar, and he tweeted about this too, as will I, the passing of an icon, Fernando Valenzuela, as the Dodgers get ready to face the Yankees in the World Series. Fernando, was he only 63? He had some kind of health issues, but speaking of the 80s, right after Reagan was inaugurated, Fernando Mania sweeps through baseball. He's 20 years old. He starts the season 8-0 with a 0.5 ERA. Won the Rookie of the Year in the National League and the Cy Young Awards and led the Dodgers to the World Series title. Maybe that's an omen to be all in for the Dodgers. So Josh Kraushaar thinking about that and a few other things as well. Checking that Twitter feed. Josh, good morning. Welcome, sir. How you doing? Happy Wednesday.
Hey, Mark, good morning. Great to be with you.
Great to see you. All right, so let me ask you the same general question I've asked everybody, or let me just share everybody else's answer. 13 days out, folks seem to think the concrete is starting to set, that this is Trump's race to lose. True or premature?
Well, I think it's very close. I don't think we can say with any strong confidence that it's Trump's race to lose at this point. But I think the momentum is certainly with Donald Trump. I like to say that actions speak as loudly as the polls do. And when you see Democratic senators in those three key Midwestern and blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, touting the work that they've done with Donald Trump in the final ads that they've been putting up on the airwaves, it shows you that Trump they clearly see Trump with an edge, and they need to win over some of those Trump voters to have a chance at winning. When you see sort of the leaks coming from Harris world expressing nervousness, trying to almost downplay expectations, you can see that they're not necessarily hitting their marks. When you see the scrambling to win over base voters like African American men, and even like never Trump Republicans with Liz Cheney on Monday, I don't think those voters are really. If you're worried about the base, that's a problem in and of itself. And I don't know how many never Trump Republicans, by definition, are not going to vote for Harris. I think a lot of those voters in the most anti-Trump Republican bloc are already made up their minds. So, I think that it shows that Harris campaign is literally scrambling for every vote, and they're not hitting the marks that they've been hoping for throughout the campaign.
American voters are famously under-attentive to international matters and foreign policy. Is there something about this slightly over a year-long war between Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah that has laid bare the hypocrisy of the Biden-Harris administration in talking a good game about supporting Israel and then doing so little to actually do so? Has that been a net negative to her campaign?
Well, what's been a net negative, it has been the fact that they've been trying to pander to both Jewish Americans, and then they've been, and look, I think you can point to a lot of areas of their policy that has been supportive of Israel and more supportive, frankly, than a lot of the squad and left-wing Democrats have been talking about, and even some more rank-and-file Democrats like a Chris Van Hollen or Chris Murphy. I mean, the Democratic Party has moved well to the left on Israel, and they have not course-corrected. And Harris, the administration, in a weird way, has been actually more to the middle or more to the center of where the party is right now. I think it's a problem though, because Harris is sort of afraid of speaking out against the extreme wing the anti-Israel wing of the party. They're trying to pander for anti-Israel Arab American votes in Michigan, but they're Jewish voters there as well. They're Jewish voters in Pennsylvania and a lot of other swing states that are much more of a larger constituency. And I think it also, I mean, it goes back to like you're having an event with Liz Cheney, who, whatever you think of Liz Cheney, she was a national security hawk, like resolutely pro-Israel, anti-Iran during her time in Congress. That subject barely, if at all, came up during these town hall meetings. Like if you're actually if you're Kamala Harris and you're trying to win over some Trump skeptical Republicans, independents at the last minute, you would think you would do it on substance. You would think you would do it on an issue that Cheney is known for. And instead they've glossed over policy and made this campaign all about vibes instead of actual substance.
Well, because you're using earth logic, and that's not what drives Liz Cheney. She is sacrificing everything she ever believed in because she hates Trump's guts. Last minute or so, Josh, I want to run this by you. We talk about Jewish voters. Gather 100 Jewish voters. I don't know. I think the Jewish vote is probably going to lean toward Kamala, not as much as it has in the past. Is it fair or unfair to say to the Jewish Democrat voter, other things must mean more to you than Israel does?
Well, look, you're right. Like two Jews, three opinions. There is a lot of debate in the community, right? That's part of what's always been. You're right, Mark, that like 75% is a pretty good average for the Democratic vote for Jews. The Jewish voters since the days of FDR have been a solidly Democratic voting bloc. In this election, the polls suggest that Harris is closer to the mid to upper 60s. So there is slippage. And there's also larger slippage with the broader I mean, a lot of the battle over Israel and foreign policy is within the Democratic Party because there's really a civil war taking place between the AOC wing and some of the more moderate pro-Israel Democrats.
No doubt.
And that's
no doubt
where we're seeing these primaries. But look, I think that is an issue that Trump has talked about quite a bit. And even small shifts can make a big difference in a close race.
That they can. Well, listen, thanks for chronicling those with us. Josh Kraushaar, Jewish Insider. Thanks so much.